This is the season where we will see the Andy Avalos defense and particularly that pressure defense come to fruition for TCU.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Stephen Simcox. I've been covering TCU athletics for the past 12 years. We're brought to you today by Gametime. If you need tickets to your next sporting event, concert, comedy show, check out the Gametime app today. Download it. Later on in the program, we'll talk about Tanner Toolson, a player from Utah Valley, a guard with some size who can shoot a little bit. Jamie Plunkett from Horned Frog Blitz reporting that TCU basketball will have him on campus tomorrow. I also discussed yesterday, should TCU be on guard with Josh Hoover, Tennessee? They have an opening now at quarterback. Nico Emaliava leaving in the transfer portal. Could Josh Hoover fill that spot? There hasn't been much chatter yet. But at the very least, I think this could lead to TCU giving Josh a little more money. You guys had some good thoughts on that topic. Haley Van Lith selected by the Chicago Sky in the WNBA draft tonight. Madison Connors selected by the Seattle Storm. But we start today with TCU football. The rest of the week, we're going to do a series called Bold Predictions. My 4 bold predictions for the TCU football season. My first bold prediction. TCU will have over 30 sacks in 2025. And you might say to yourself, is that some random or arbitrary number? No. Last season, TCU had 26 sacks. They were led by Devin Deal, who had 5.5. Devin, stud linebacker, edge rusher, really good player. Namdio Bizor had 2.5. He's returning. Zach Chapman had 3. He's coming back. Cooper McDonald had 3. He'll be moving on. Marcel Brooks had a couple. He's moving on. Jonathan Bax is a name to know. Chad Woodfork is a name to know. Paul Olawale coming back from injury. But last season, I talked a lot about Andy Avalos and his new defense and what he would bring to TCU. And something I said often was, he's going to bring more pressure on the quarterback because that's what he does. And simply from a numbers standpoint, he's more willing to bring blitzes. Joe Gillespie was very adverse to bringing blitzes. In fact, aside from Northwestern, TCU in Joe's last season as play caller on defense, blitzed the least amount of times in Power 4 football. The only team that blitzed less was Northwestern. But that being said, if you want to hear a stat that probably doesn't make you feel warm and fuzzy, TCU had 26 sacks in 2024. In 2023, they had 26 sacks. So the exact same number. And I was curious, not that TCU has really had a great defense since Sonny Dykes took over, but that 2022 team was at least opportunistic. It felt like they made big-time plays. They had 30 sacks. So slightly more than the 26 that was listed. I do think it's important to note, though, that team played more games than the 2024 or 2023 team did. They played 2 more games than TCU did last year, 3 more games than the year before. So they have more opportunities. D. Winters led the team with 7.5 sacks, if you're curious. But the reason that I think this will be the year where TCU breaks through when it comes to pressuring the quarterback and causing negative plays, first of all, is the depth. I mentioned some of those names at the top of the show. Devin Deal coming back. He's going to be ready to rock and roll. He's a pass rusher. He's a difference maker. He's somebody who can make plays. Zach Chapman was a freshman All-American, according to The Athletic. He was a guy who had to play a lot, grow up in a hurry, and he did a nice job at defensive end. Johnson backs is your prototypical size and frame for an edge rusher. When Andy Avalos took the job, that was the first name that everybody sort of thought of. Last season, you didn't see it much in the games, but with Cooper McDonald being an experienced player and coming in ready to plug and play from San Diego State, you didn't necessarily have a reason to give Johnson backs a ton of snaps. That being said, late in the year, forced fumble against Oklahoma State, made some plays in the game against Arizona, slowly started to contribute more. Travis Jackson had 1.5 sacks last season. Again, similar to Zach Chapman, a dude who had to play a lot right away. And pressure doesn't just come from the edge. Marcus Deal in the interior. Connor Lindgren was a guy who flashed a little bit in moments, particularly in that Utah game. He made some plays. Tristan Johnson is a name that we've heard during spring practice as an interior guy who can make things happen. Kelton Mickle, the JUCO transfer. Perry Cole, the JUCO transfer. Ansel Dinboo, who had 6 sacks at Wazoo last season and was a playmaker. There's some depth to this D-line. For the first time in a while, it feels like you can legitimately have some rotations working. And then you also have a couple of young guys, true freshmen, that I think you can use situationally and not put a lot of pressure on them, and they can thrive. Chad Woodfork is who I'm thinking about first. 4-star recruit, highest rated dude in this class, early enrollee, should be familiar with the playbook. And honestly, I don't think there's a lot of the playbook that he has to digest to do well in the role that I'm thinking about this upcoming season, which is similar to what Marcel Brooks did. Marcel would make plays, and there would be a lot of discussion. Hey, this dude seems to have a nose for the football. He makes plays behind the line of scrimmage. He's explosive. Why is he not on the field more? Well, the easy answer for that is he wasn't a 3-down player. But he was good at what he was asked to do, which was, hey, obvious passing situations, use that athleticism, use that speed against a tired offensive line to go make something happen. Chad Woodfork could be that kind of dude for TCU this year. John Schobel, he's a guy that I wasn't super sure could be a contributor year one because he's kind of in a transition phase. He was a inside linebacker in high school. He's moving out to this edge position. Can he figure that out quickly? But Andy Avalos said in the press conference last week, he was like, look, Woodfork and Schobel are guys that I'm super excited about. And it's not just because of their potential, but they're putting in the work during camp. They're frequently some of the first guys in the film room. They're studying tape. They're trying to get familiar with what we're doing. They're putting in the time needed to be a force in this defense. All of this works hand in hand. Another aspect of this that makes me confident they're going to hit this number, over 30 sacks. The secondary has a ton of experience. They should be better. What does that do for your defensive line? If you believe that your corners and safeties can survive and thrive and win one-on-one matchups, it gives you the confidence to take more risk when it comes to bringing pressure, to come from different angles. A lot of the disguising coverages coming from different spots on the field that we were hopeful about when Andy Avalos got the job and that we didn't see a lot last year, that can be made That can be made possible if the defense starts working in concert together. And if he believes, okay, I can put some of these experienced corners on an island and I don't have to worry about getting beat over the top over and over again. Now, if you're bringing pressure, you're going to give up big plays. Because when I would talk about Joe Gillespie back in the day, and that was a frequent source of frustration, I would warn people. I was like, look, this is not just a magic elixir to totally fix your defense. There's a trade-off. If you're taking some of those risks, then you're bound to give up some big chunk plays. You think back to the Gary Patterson era. He had great defenses. Even his best defenses would give up some plays over the top because they were bringing a lot of extra bodies. They were throwing people at the quarterback. And that left your corners one-on-one in the back end. And you're going to lose some of those battles. But if you win more than you lose, then you can keep your head up afloat. And if you're making splash plays, which means getting tackles behind the line of scrimmage, sacking the quarterback, causing turnovers, you can make up for some of those big plays that you give up on your own. There's a trade-off there. This is a really important season for this defensive line. And some of these guys that have been injured, like I don't know if Paul Olawale is going to be a dude right away. But the good news is I think there's enough players in that room that you don't need him to be the guy right this minute. If it takes a little bit of time, that's all right. If he becomes more of a situational pass rusher, they can survive that because they now have the depth to get the job done. When we come back, you guys had some good thoughts about Josh Hoover and where TCU stands with him. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Gametime, they're one of our great sponsors. I love the Gametime app. I bought TCU tickets on the Gametime app. I bought football tickets, basketball tickets. I'm going to buy baseball tickets at some point this year. It's super easy to use. They show you what you're going to see when you sit down in your seat. They show you the view from your seat in a picture. There's no hidden fees. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Gametime app today. They make it very simple for you. They have curated deals. They have last-minute sales, flash deals. So if you put it off and you can't, or you're a procrastinator to a certain extent, you can still get what you need with the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app today. Give it a try. Gametime, it's where the game starts. Again, that promo code is LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions do apply. Okay, so if you didn't see yesterday's episode and you're like, why are you talking about Josh Hoover in Tennessee? Here's the backstory. Nico Amaliava, former Tennessee quarterback, staged the first ever college football holdout. He wasn't happy with his NIL deal. He wanted more money. He communicated that to the coaching staff. There wasn't much movement there. He sat out of practice last Friday. He did not show up to the spring game on Saturday. News leaks out that he entered the transfer portal. Basically, Tennessee said, this is the deal you get. You don't like that, you can go somewhere else. So he's going to test out the market, which means Tennessee now has a quarterback issue. They need to find one or develop the young guys that are currently in that room. Well, what does that mean for good Power 4 starting quarterbacks across the country? That means they could be targets. And I think at the very least, TCU might have to go to Josh Hoover and be like, look, you're valued. We love you. Here's a little extra cash. Let's keep it rolling. But some of you guys had thoughts on this, and I appreciated the discussion. Tommy Fisher said, Josh doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would bounce like that so late in the game. I think he understands the team is built around him. He has everything he needs to win at a high level. He strikes me as a character leader and not the type of person that would go to Tennessee. I hope I'm right. I think you're right, too. And I'm always careful because we don't truly know these people. Some of you might. Some of you listening might have connections. Your parents of the kids that are playing, whatever the case is. So I can't speak for you. I'll speak for myself. I'm an outsider to a certain extent. I'm just observing what I can from a distance, right? But that being said, Josh Hoover seems like a great leader. He seems like a good dude. He seems like a stand-up guy. And the team has rallied around him. And I think one important point that Tommy made here, TCU has built this thing around him. They have. I said this when Haas Haney hit the portal. TCU has had multiple chances over the past year and a half to signal to Josh Hoover that he wasn't the dude. They stuck with him when Chandler Morris was healthy again late in the season a couple of years ago. They said, you know what? We want to see what this guy's got. That offseason, same thing. They committed to him. They didn't go grab somebody out of the portal for a starting job. Some of us malign that. We're like, what the heck? They went and got a backup QB. They stuck with Josh, and they let it ride all season long. This past offseason, Haas Haney looked at the depth chart and said, you know what? When I committed here, when I signed here, I thought there was a chance I could start in year 2. Doesn't look like that's the case. I'm going to move on. And the coaching staff, I mean, not that they were happy about it, but they said, okay. And they stuck with their guy. So they've stuck with him through some crossroads types of situations. And I think you're right. They have allocated their NIL funds and they have committed their resources to building a good team around Josh Hoover. And they want him to be the dude. And I think Josh realizes that. And I do feel like he has a sense of loyalty because of what TCU has done and because of what this program has done for him. Texas Pride says the transfer portal and NIL money must both be eliminated. They're both ruining college football. Go back to the way it was before the portal and NIL. So I disagree with you slightly. I'm not going to disagree with you completely. I think the transfer portal and NIL has made college football more complicated. I feel like fans are the ones that lose out in these scenarios. I don't think it should go away completely. I just feel like it needs to be revamped and there needs to be more rules. I'm all for college athletes getting compensated and getting what they feel like they're worth. And in some ways, I think in this Nico case, it is an example of how things should work. He thought he deserved more money. Tennessee disagreed. He's moving on. But part of the charm and the mystique of college sports is that players commit to a school. They stick around for 3 or 4 years. They get degrees there. They get woven into the fabric of the community. And they become insanely popular players. That's getting lost in the portal. It's worse in college basketball than anywhere else. And look, I mean, TCU women's basketball is benefiting from it right now. They just got Olivia Miles in the portal. TCU men's basketball is rebuilding their roster to a certain extent. Most basketball schools, or I should say basketball programs outside of, I guess, the Blue Bloods, are rebuilding their program year after year through the portal. I don't think that helps get fans in the stands. I don't think it helps keep people engaged, but it's the reality of the situation right now. They need to get a salary cap. They need to get more ground rules in these situations. Richard Berry says, I'm glad Tennessee stood up for the school and not the player. I don't mind players being paid. I just like to see a cap like the NFL. Yes, that seems reasonable. It seems reasonable to want a salary cap and to want some sort of more binding contract that would lock these guys in for a certain period of time. So you're not constantly worried about when the shoe's going to drop and when the next guy's going to be moving on. And Frog Fan says, I hate hearing Hoover's a likely candidate from some sources to be the Tennessee QB. He's not the kind of kid to demand more money. Yeah, I don't know if he's likely. I think some Tennessee fans have thrown his name out there. But as I've communicated earlier, I think he's got a great relationship with the university, with the coaching staff, and he's compensated well. And again, they've made a commitment to him on the field too, which I feel like means something to Josh because from what I can tell, he's a winner. He's got those intangibles you want from your quarterback. He does things the right way. So all of that, I think, is working in TCU's favor in this particular situation. But I do believe it's something that you got to be on the guard for and just be on the lookout for as a football program. Like, hey, we need to make sure that we are communicating all these things properly to him so that he feels like he's the most important person in the room. When we come back, TCU men's basketball has a transfer target on campus. We'll talk about that here on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. Monarch Money. It's not just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center that make it easy for you to track your accounts, build your wealth. They have great insights, all-in-one convenience, easy collaboration, manage your money with your partner smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Give Monarch Money a try today. So according to Jamie Plunkett from Horned Frog Blitz, TCU is pursuing Tanner Toolson from Utah Valley. Before that, he was at BYU. Toolson at Utah Valley last year averaged 13 points a game, 4 rebounds, and 1 assist. He's a 6'5" guard from Vancouver, Washington originally. He shot 45% from the field and 34% from three-point range last year. He's another scorer. They need one of those guys on the roster. They got Jaden Pierre. They got Brock Harding. They have some guys returning. They need another dude who can shoot and fill it up. I would love to have a 40% three-point shooter in the fold. But if Toolson is the guy that you can get, I think you definitely make room for him and go get him. I asked Jake Hatch, who hosts Locked On BYU, for a little, blurb on Toolson since he was a former BYU guy. He said he's developed into a good player, strong three-point shooter, and I would like him to come back to BYU, but he wants more of a prominent role. So get him on campus today. I guess I should say today because you're listening to this on Tuesday. Get him on campus today. And I think the selling point for TCU basketball right now on the men's side is there's playing time and there's opportunities. You're going to get the rock. You're going to get a chance to score. And this is a guy who wants that and is looking for that. So that should be the major selling point when they're talking about how to get him on campus and what to do with him moving forward. But Tanner Toolson from Utah Valley, again, averaged 13 points, had a big game in the WAC title game, I believe it was, against Grand Canyon, where he scored 28 points. So he can go score. And they need a dude like that because aside from Jaden Pierre, they just don't have somebody who really fits that mold in what they want to do offensively. So we'll see where that lands and where he ends up. TCU women's basketball, WNBA draft was tonight. Haley Van Lith headed to the Chicago Sky, where she will be back with her former teammate at LSU, Angel Reese, and Madison Connor, selected by the Seattle Storm. Sedona Prince was not picked. Not sure if she'll end up anywhere on a free agent deal. But a couple cool stories. Haley Van Lith has been very public about mental health and what this year at TCU has meant to her and bouncing back in that regard, how Mark Campbell has helped her not just as a basketball player, but it's kind of helped recenter her as a person, which is awesome to see. She's a great advocate for TCU. I wish her the best in Chicago. I know she went to 3 different schools, but I hope that was such a cool run that, the TCU brand and the TCU name means something to her moving forward. And then Madison Connor, she was a player at Arizona that averaged 4 points a game, which is a spot-up shooter. And Mark Campbell saw something in her game and convinced her to come to TCU and gave her a shot to be more than just a, wide open 3-point shooter, turned her into more of a scorer, ran her off screens all over the place. She's a sniper, man. She can fill it up. So I hope, it's tough to make a WNBA roster. There's only 12 teams. There's not a lot of spots. But I hope that shooting ability gives her the opportunity to make it because she's a special player. And in the era of basketball that we live in today, where it's so much about spacing and being able to hit threes, Madison Connor could be a big asset. And I'm excited she's getting an opportunity there in Seattle. And we'll see if Sedona Prince ends up somewhere. But congratulations to both of those players as they move on with their professional career. We'll be back again tomorrow. We'll be talking spring football and more bold predictions. Let me know your bold predictions in the YouTube comments here. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel or on your favorite podcast platform.